In this video, I'm going to be trying 3 different virtual cycling races. We've all seen the rise of things like Peloton, but let me tell you, this isn't that, and I think this is significantly better. There's many virtual cycling platforms you can choose from now, but one of the most popular ones has to be Zwift. They have numerous different events. They have training programs, they have group rides, and they have races, and that's what we're going to be going over in this video. They come in different formats and various lengths and different amounts of elevation, and you get to race people all over the world. To make this fair though, and so that anybody can race on Zwift, they split people up into different categories based on ability. And they do this by using watts per kilo. This is how many watts you generate on the bike per kilogram of your body weight. This then translates to the virtual world and moves your avatar. Generally, the more power you put out, the faster your avatar will go. To give you the best idea on what things are like and the different categories, I'm going to be putting myself through the punishment of doing 3 different races across 3 different categories: the A category, the B category, and the C category. A being like the pro category, and B and C being slightly slower and slightly easier categories. I'm going to start off with the A race first, the hardest one, and I'm not too confident at surviving this one at all, but I'm going to go for the win in each of these 3 races and see if I can get on the podium. All right then, let's kick things off with this A race. Going to be the hardest one, obviously being the hardest category, so we'll really see how difficult I find it during this race. I actually picked a shorter one just to make it that bit easier. And interestingly, in this race design, everyone starts off at the same time. So you see here, we've got this massive big bunch, and I'm already working super hard, just sort of 10 seconds in at like 300, 400 watts. Which is really difficult for me, and my heart rate spikes up straight to 160, and I'm having to get in and out of the saddle just to kind of stay towards the front of this race. Now, coming just 2 minutes in, you can see things start to break up a little bit. You've got that group out in front, you can see in the top right-hand corner, that's the mini map. So I get into this group, there's guys way out in front, there's no chance that we're gonna catch them. But this group seems a bit more sustainable for me. It's still a lot of power and I'm finding it really difficult, but I managed to keep with this group. Now, if you're not familiar with Zwift, I'm the guy right in the middle of the screen. I've got my power output, which is watts in the top left-hand side as you're looking. And I'm set up in the gym on the turbo trainer pedaling away, and I've got a green screen so you can see me overlapping the screen. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. So not much happens for quite some time once I'm in this group, but this is where it gets interesting. We have the first hill, and this is where I struggle to stay in the group that I'm in, and I start to find things really difficult because everyone starts putting up the watts as they're going uphill. I'm now doing like 300 to 400 watts rather than what we were rolling at, which was much easier. And we have these 8-10% sort of gradients coming up, and you can see everyone's kind of stringing out, so the group separates a lot more. You don't get as much of a benefit in terms of the aerodynamics here, so you really have to put the power down if you want to stay towards the top. And you want to be in that group come the top of the hill, because obviously then there's going to be a breakaway, and there's just such a big advantage of drafting when it comes to cycling. And it's the same on Zwift. So you can see here, I put out a lot of power. I managed to kind of stay with them thereabouts. There's a few up the road. So you can see the progress bar at the top. It's just 1 lap of this circuit. We've got 1.1K left. And I managed to make up some ground on the flat section towards this group. So these guys absolutely left me for dead on the hill, but I worked really hard, just 200 meters left. And I'm just giving everything I've got. I've managed to make up a couple of places, and I'm just gonna absolutely nail it all the way to the line, having had just a really tough ride and still being way back in the pack, sort of 67th out of 182, and that's across all of the categories. In terms of the A category, I'm dead last. There wasn't many A's in this race, but I'm dead last across the line, and I found it super, super hard. Let's go then into this B race. I should have much more luck here. It should be a bit more competitive. And this B race, we're actually split into just B. So there's no A category riders and there's no C category riders here. These are all B category riders, which should make it much more competitive. There's nobody else around. but it is a big group, as you can see. Now, as with all Zwift races, they start off really quite quick, but I managed to stay in the front group, putting out a ton of watts. But then we get to this hill, and that's where things immediately start to split up. And I'm finding it difficult because I've put out so much power just to stay in the front group, even just for the first minute or so, and then we get smacked straight into this hill. So things just completely string out. I completely lose that front group, and I'm hoping there's a group behind that I can kind of attach myself to and get that drafting bonus and stick with them. But unfortunately, I kind of just slip all the way through towards the back of the pack because I'm just really struggling to keep up. It's super difficult. But I come across this guy, which is awesome. So there's 2 of us at least, and then we come across a 3rd guy. So we've kind of got a group of 3 here. We're in sort of 87th position, so way back. There must be 2 or 3 groups ahead of us, and now it's kind of, we're just coasting, sticking together, and just trying to get through it. But towards the end here, I actually managed to pick up the watts a little bit, and we get into a hillier type section. So I managed to gain a few places, which is awesome. There's not many people around here at the back, but I managed to pick off 1 or 2 people, and then we have this finish. And it's 58 minutes into this one, and I found it really hard. I was way off the back. I wasn't competitive in any way, which is just really challenging. So I coasted a lot of it. And anyway, I gave it a dig towards the end and across the line in just under an hour, probably not averaging much in terms of watts per kilo. All right, I'm super pumped up and excited for this one because I should be in contention for the podium, I reckon. If I play my cards right, I race well, put out the power, this should be the most competitive one. So like all races, again, this starts out such a high wattage, but it soon kind of dies down, and I managed to get in this front group, which is awesome. We're all working together. There's a lot of us in this race, so we get a nice big draft bonus. And if I can just stay here and sit in and then try and win with a sprint finish, that would be completely awesome, and shows that we can all get on the podium when it comes to virtual cycling. Now, around 13.5K left, we're going past the sunflowers. Super nice, cruisy doozy in this big group. And I'm actually feeling just really good at this point. So I've talked a little bit about the mini map and the progress bar at the top, and you've also got elapsed time and the elevation and the distance covered. But on the right hand side, you've got all of those people that you're kind of racing against, and you can actually see their watts per kilo, which is really interesting. So if you see that somebody's really picking it up, you know then that you need to pick things up to kind of stay with the group. Now, this section is really where I missed up. There was a sprint section here that I've just gone through, and that's kind of the finish line. And I didn't really realize, and there was a lot of people kind of sprinting off the front, which has then meant, you know, I was taking it easy through that section because I didn't realize, but that then meant that there was a few people off the front, and then people started to close the gap and chase those people. So it strung things out, and I was kind of left for dead a little bit, cruising towards the back. And I had to put in a lot of power to get on the back of this front group. And you see at the bottom, you've got that power graph, the red, the yellow, the green, that sort of thing. That's the amount of power I'm putting out relative to my kind of functional threshold power, my ability basically. And the squiggly red line, that's my heart rate. So I had to put out loads of power to actually get in that group. And then we come to kind of a little bit of a hill, and people start to push the pace a little bit here. And because I've used a lot of energy just trying to get on the back of that group, I'm struggling at this point with the hill, and we're just 20 minutes into it. My heart rate is like 170 beats. I'm putting out a lot of power, and I'm just not managing to stick with them. My legs are burning. I remember, really difficult. I go into the red a little bit, into the yellow bit, trying to put out some power to keep up, but I just kind of couldn't manage it. And they all get that drafting bonus because if they're in the group, they get that drafting bonus. You have to put out a lot of watts per kilo to try and bridge the gap and catch up. And at that point, I just really couldn't do it. So completely lost the front group, and so did a lot of people as well. So there's a lot of people now in between me and the front group, and we're just kind of spreading out. So at this point, I see a group that was kind of behind of us, and I just tack on to those. I put out a little bit of extra power when they come past me, just to make sure they don't fly past me with that drafting bonus. And I just stick with them now, which is really nice. But I know I'm not in contention, obviously, for a podium place, because there's people way out in front. But at least I've got this group and I can sprint against them to try and get the best possible position towards the end. Unfortunately though, we go through this weird kind of windy type section, and things kind of just spread out, and they put out the power. I increase my power, but I don't manage to keep up. I think I'm just absolutely shattered at this point. And there you go, you see lots of them just get away from me in the distance, even though I have put out a little bit of extra power to what we were putting out. I just can't keep up. We've got 500 meters to go. So I'm kind of just left on my own in the middle of this race to have that sprint finish and just dig it out against myself, which is what I do. I increase the power, go into the red a little bit, and then just cross the line in just under 38 minutes. So undoubtedly then, Zwift racing is absolute fun, but also really, really challenging and really difficult. But there's a lot we can learn from it, and there's so many benefits you can get from it. It always starts off super difficult, and that's because everyone's trying to get towards the front and be in that front group, because you get such a big drafting benefit. So you really have to dig deep at the start, put out a lot of power to get in that front group, and then it'll ease off as everyone bunches up and you get that drafting bonus. And then typically there's a sprint finish at the end. The other thing is, when it comes to hills and elevation, it's super realistic and it gets really difficult at those points, and you need to put out the power just to stay up towards the front of the group. So that's a place where you have to look out for, because you can easily get dropped. The other thing is, there's so much data on the screen that you can use to help you. So obviously on the right hand side, you can see everybody else's power output, and if you see people that are upping the power output, and there's quite a few of them, you need to make sure you're matching it, so you go with them. And again, you don't get dropped off the bat. Come here though, check this out. I've just got to show you something. Look how sexy my avatar is. So this is my guy. I get to pick different jerseys. I get to pick my bike. I can pick sunglasses, helmets, wheels, socks even. Anyway, I do enough of that. So back to the video. Because they're so intense as well, you probably don't want to be doing racing all the time. You don't want to be doing a race every day or every other day, because they're such high intensity, and there's no doubt that you kind of get drawn into that competitive side of things. So use them sparingly, but they're super effective. So let's talk about that as well. Is you can get so much out of it in a short amount of time, and it's so much easier than going out riding on the road. You don't have to think about where you're going. You don't have to stop and start for traffic. There's no kind of freewheeling or coasting. It's just intense the entire way through. And that's probably why a lot of people say half an hour on the turbo trainer is like an hour out on the road, because out on the road, you get other things that kind of stop and start, and you get that freewheeling and that coasting. Whereas on Zwift, you're just all in it. There's obviously no traffic. You don't have to stop for red lights, and everyone's just gunning for it and racing each other. So it's super time efficient. And in terms of the practicalities of it, you just jump on a turbo trainer, Bluetooth it to the laptop, open up the software, and then you can just race. And there's so many different events on at different times of day. You'll always find a race where there's people in, and it's just so easy. You don't have to worry about clothing so much. If it's the winter, you don't have to worry about the bike getting wet. You don't have to worry about, you know, where you're going to go, how long it's going to take you to get back, if you get a puncture, all of those things that make it a little bit difficult to ride outside on the road if you're busy and you've got other commitments. Zwift and turbo training is just really convenient in that respect. And I don't know about you, I couldn't just sit indoors on a bike in the gym or sit at home on a turbo trainer and just spin. Having Zwift, having that immersive game-like experience just makes it so much more engaging and entertaining. There's loads of room for improvement. There's loads of people that are my ability, which is awesome. And there's competition for everybody. And in a way that's encouraging. There's also a D category, but unfortunately with Zwift category enforcements now, I couldn't do that kind of lower category race, because all the races and events that I've done on Zwift beforehand were putting me at a higher power output. So it works out that I can't enter those races, but I can enter any races above what I'm currently at, which makes it really good. It makes it a really fair place, really competitive place, really healthy place for everybody to kind of race and compete. and get so much out of it. Now, let me know in the comments below if you've tried Zwift, if you're going to try Zwift in 2023. I've got some other challenges coming up, so subscribe if you want to see that. And like this video for all of the punishment that I've had to do to try the 3 different categories that I did racing above my pay grade. But until the next one, have a really good one, and I'll see you then.